Thank you very much, brother. Gracias.
So, what are you doing to celebrate today, other than talking to me for in the morning? What time is it
uh,
there?
well, what time is it here?
Yeah.
It's just like Eastern time, same as New York.
Okay.
So it's then 10 a.m. Yeah.
Perfect.
Nothing. I'm just gonna hang out with the family, during the have a small Corona party.
Are things? What's the lockdown situation like there?
We are still under a lockdown, and I've said this on other podcasts and other shows, John. It's basically because the Maduro regime will just continue leveraging the whole coronavirus thing, but for their own purposes, right? They want to hide as much as possible from the U.S. Treasury and FinCEN and OFAC and all of those guys.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound that much different than every other regime in the world, using this to their optimal advantage.
Totally, yeah.
So, man, I've speaking of other podcasts, I've heard you on some other shows, and I think I first heard you with Brady, and then I listened to Princey recently, and I just love the energy, man. It's listening to those podcasts, I got a huge smile on my face the whole time, primarily because you're always laughing and smiling and so enthusiastic about this stuff.
Thanks, man. Well, we said it in the community and the ecosystem. Bitcoin is a pill, right? So when you take a pill, you got to be full of energy, man.
So, for those people that, and for my knowledge, actually, because I don't remember the origin story, but why don't we just get that kicked off with how you got into this and what you're up to now, and then we'll just let it roll from there.
Cool. So I got into Bitcoin. I started building my own Bitcoin rabbit hole story in 2011. When I first dived into Bitcoin on the internet, was with some friends, with a couple of friends at a friend's apartment. It was just an interesting thing. But then, yeah, after that, I basically founded one of the biggest Bitcoin mining farms, like 2 years later, with a couple of friends as well. And there were people from Banesco, which is basically one of the biggest banking entities from Venezuela. Banesco CTO was with us on that project, so that was pretty amazing. And then afterwards, I just started. We continued mining for over 2 years, and then we just sold the hardware and we sold the mining farm. At that time in 2015, it was starting to get a little bit hefty, the environment. If you were mining, the government, at first it was like, what are you doing, man? You're mining whatever mining is, this magical coin over the internet that's worthless. You were just a geek, so people wouldn't. I mean, you did not bother anyone whatsoever at that time. But yeah, I mean, after that, I tried building the first Venezuelan Bitcoin exchange with a couple of dudes. That was in 2016, almost 2017. I did not like the dudes so much, their virtues and what they were up to. And so in 2017, I went to China, check out the industry over there. Frankly, I need to be honest. I don't know what the probability is of this happening, but my host in China both knew about Bitcoin, and I spent a lot of time with them talking about Bitcoin, etc.
You mean just randomly, like your Airbnb host knew about it?
Airbnb host, correct.
Holy
That,
shit.
yeah, that was in Shenzhen. Bitcoin's price was starting to skyrocket, right? Because it was 2016, it was the U.S. elections, Trump was just winning, and Bitcoin was mooning to $900 almost at the end of 2017. The bubble was just starting. And then I was trying to get out of my country, like go live abroad, but I just came back to Venezuela and I doubled down on Bitcoin. And that's when in 2017, I started Coinspree. And then eventually I became like the most unique advocate regarding Bitcoin full nodes and custodian solutions for Latam and Venezuela.
Right. Well, before we get into Coinspree, because I lived about almost 10 years in China, mostly in Shanghai and a little bit in
Cool.
Beijing. So, and I know Shenzhen is kind of like the hardware capital of the world. And, there's a lot going on down there in that domain. How long were you there, and what was your experience like there? What'd you think?
Well, I was there for 45 days. it was an awesome experience because 5 days before going to China, I didn't know it was supposed to go. It was just Bitcoin helped me doing that, by the way. So totally, man. I mean, Shenzhen is awesome. I went to Huajianbei, which is basically like one of the biggest hardware shopping malls of the globe. That was pretty interesting. I must say that, look, in China, that was 2016. You could pay for bananas that to a guy that cultivated those bananas at his house using WeChat. So you're already talking about digital payments, massifying digital payments inside China.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this picking up with Alipay and yeah, all of those services that are being built right now in China. Big tech in China, man. I mean, Shenzhen is like the Silicon Valley of China, literally. It was amazing. So many people. So it even the smell. I remember getting to Hong Kong. I was like, what is this smell in the air? It's people's skin, man. I mean, they eat differently, they live differently. They're on the other side of the globe. Of course, you can expect those kind of things.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a
it's
lifetime experience.
it's it's a it's an amazing place. I mean, I know, every no place is free of criticism, and China certainly has a lot of reason. There's certainly a lot of reasons to be critical of China, but just the scale of activity that's there is like always stunning. And I've been there for a long
Yeah,
time, and I still would go to places like you just described and see the hustle and see the scale of activity, and you're just like, oh my God. And the thing that always that fascinated me was, you brought up WeChat and Alipay. Like that stuff in 2015 was normal. And the interesting thing about it is, in Western markets or in developed countries, let's say, it seems, or maybe everywhere else in the world, it seems that when new technologies emerge, the adoption curve is like way slower and longer. Certain demographics will be slow to catch on, if they catch on at all, et cetera. But in China, literally, like WePay is available, and a month later, 99% of the population uses it for
yeah,
daily
man.
transactions. Like the 90-year-old lady selling carrots on the side of the road accepts WeChat like a month after it's available. Like there's not really any cash in China anymore, and it's been that way for
Yeah,
a long
yeah.
time because it's so easy to use WeChat and Alipay, and it's so integrated into so many things. But what was the reason why you went to China in the first place?
Well, my father had an automation company, so he did like lighting projects throughout Latam, big projects for banking entities and shopping malls, etc. So I was supposed to go there and visit like a bunch of hardware factories for us to develop our own hardware. It was very cool. I actually developed a light bulb that was connected to Alexa, and you tell like Alexa said, I called it Jarvis. Said Jarvis blue, said Jarvis red, said Jarvis green. That was amazing.
Wow.
But yeah, I visited like over 27 factories, I think.
And when you were there, did you like research much in the Bitcoin space, or was it just your host? You had some chat with them, and did you go visit miners and manufacturers and stuff like that?
No, I did not. I would love to though. I
Yeah.
do have a couple of friends from Venezuela that have done that, like visited Bitmain's factories in China, and people who have imported like over $50 million in Bitcoin mining hardware into Venezuela.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, again, before we get into Coinspree, obviously a lot is made of the Maduro regime and what's been going on in Venezuela over the last number of years. What is how much do they crack down on Bitcoin and Bitcoin entrepreneurs? Like, it seems like they're kind of permitting the industry to exist in large part. What's the status of, being able to work in and use Bitcoin in Venezuela?
I mean, Paxful just left Venezuela, right? Because of the regulatory environment, etc. If
Right.
you're an international player and you're starting to penetrate the Venezuelan market, you will find bombs on the road, like and walls. The regulatory environment is not very friendly for international companies to start doing business inside Venezuela, because you have to deal with SUNACRIP, which is the cryptocurrency regulator inside Venezuela, and SUNACRIP is sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury, and so the guy who runs SUNACRIP is also sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury. They have a $5 million bounty on his head, so they, of course, they allow it, because after you get sanctioned, I mean, and Venezuela, the country, by the way, it's not sanctioned. It's only some players of the Maduro regime which are being sanctioned, and the state oil company PDVSA, which was also sanctioned, because 80%, 90% of the Venezuelan economy runs on oil. So that's where they get the money from. After that happened, John, I mean, the regime has been mining Bitcoin for almost, I think, 7 years. I mean, yeah, I can tell you that.
Oh, shit.
So after they understood that they were unable to crack down on local Bitcoins Venezuela, they said, like, okay, how can we sort of draft a regulation that gives us some advantage and control over the ecosystem, and not killing it, but allowing it to sort of efficiently flow, but that also always allows us to understand and know on the front row, what the hell is happening, who is developing what inside Venezuela, who is doing what with cryptocurrencies inside Venezuela, who is El Sultan Bitcoin, for example, and all of those kind of things, man. So it's just like in China, right? We were saying, like, at a technological standpoint in China, if you do something 99%, you get mass adoption at a 99% rate after a couple of months. And that's because every single thing that you do in China related to business, if it's big enough, you have to deal with the Chinese Communist Party or someone from there. It's the same thing in Venezuela. It's the same thing in Turkey. It's the same thing in Iran, right? All of these countries. It's the same thing in Russia with the oligarchs and etc. So in that sense, yeah, I mean, the regime knows that they have to allow entrepreneurs to continue building, because mostly what we entrepreneurs, what we are using Bitcoin for is just as a back office tool to enable remittances services. So I can give you an example, like Value Colombia. Value Colombia is the biggest fintech that has been enabling remittances services back and forth from Colombia to Venezuela. So all of these Venezuelans that are living in Colombia and have their families inside Venezuela, they can use Colombian pesos, send them to Value. Value would give them some synthetic US dollars that are built with on top of BitMEX CFDs services. And so on the back office, what they use is Bitcoin. They exchange these pesos for Bitcoins, and then these Bitcoins for Bolívares inside local Bitcoins, to liquidate Bolívares inside these Venezuelan people, families' bank accounts inside the country. So will the Maduro regime crack on that? No, because they need that. They need us. They need organic volume, not that is not tied to their operations and their businesses, okay? For them to continue also using local Bitcoins, because of course, the Maduro regime uses local Bitcoins, for example, and they used to use Paxful as well to grab the Bolívares and the credits that they emit inside the banking system with the public banking entities that they control inside the economy. And so they create this new credits in Bolívares. They grab this Bolívares, and every time Bitcoin melts down in price, they just issue new Bolívares and buy more Bitcoin stash. They have billions, man, billions in Bitcoin.
That's a pretty sweet way to stack sats. So do you have to have direct involvement with the regime to do any of the things that you've done over the years and doing now?
I know them. I'm not involved. I don't even want a license. Like, they emit this licenses if you provide financial services regarding cryptocurrencies and digital assets, okay? And that's why when in 2017, when the regime started in the introduction of the El Petro cryptocurrency, etc., you know, the national cryptocurrency, that it's all over the Venezuelan regulation now. At Coinspree, we were like, okay, I told my team, like, we need to focus a lot on custodian solutions, although we understood that there was the cash flow here in Venezuela is inside, arbitrage and remittances, people who want to buy and sell Bitcoin and receive bolivares inside their bank account. Some people, like, they're not comfortable enough at buying Bitcoin using local Bitcoins, for example. And some people, like, they're not comfortable enough as well yet at using international exchanges, because international exchanges are cracking down on Venezuelans, unfortunately. Yeah. But that's why we focus a lot on custodian solutions, and that allowed us to sort of operate under the radar.
Right.
Because, yeah.
So they're aware of you. You kind of have, approval to operate, but there's no real cooperation. You guys just say, this is what we're doing. They say, okay, we'll let you do it. And that's it.
That's it. They're like, okay, Alessandro, sounds cool. Keep building.
So do you ever get, how much concern do you have that, one day you just might get that phone call to be like, yo, Alessandro, shut it down. It's finished now, or we're taking control of your ship because, we'd rather have control than have you doing whatever the hell you're doing.
Yeah, a lot, man. Okay. And I understand that because of that, Coinspree will just expand so much and so little inside Venezuela. But we are grabbing an important part of the industry here in Venezuela very strategically. And then I can say this: next year, I'm moving to Brazil, man, and to another side of the world, because I'm getting married, and I'll be expanding over
Hey,
that.
congratulations.
Thanks, man. And I'm going to keep on building on that part of Latam. Yeah.
Right. So you're moving to Brazil next year. Awesome. So, well, that was another question I had. What, you are building this business, you're an entrepreneur, you're excited about everything that you're doing. What is life like for you in Venezuela right now? I know it's different for many different people. Some people are, have abject poverty. Other people are able to keep their head above water and all that kind of stuff. What's life for you right now? What's life like for you right now in Venezuela?
I'm always thankful to God, man, every single day, because I'm a fortunate guy. That's just the reality. I'm one of these Venezuelan entrepreneurs whose father built a massive wealth inside the country a bunch of years ago, like 20 years ago. So I live in a bubble. That's a reality. I live in a bubble, man, and I know it. And that's just how Venezuela is. Like, if you're me and you're on the top 1%, for example, or you're like the medium upper class citizen type inside Venezuela, you just hang out with your friends and the people you do business with under the radar, always from home to home, never showing yourself up too much. But I'm also you got to be very patient, because sometimes it might be just so slow. I mean, sometimes you won't even have electricity. Sometimes you won't even have internet. Sometimes you won't even have water. Sometimes you won't even have gas nowadays. So that's how it's like, man. Okay, and I think it's just a lifetime lesson for me. Okay, 3 years ago, John, when I decided that I was going to stay here, that was not only because of Bitcoin or whatever. Yeah, I understood that I would have an advantage in that sense, but I wanted to stay here because this is my country. This is what's happening in my country. And if I am not seeing it, who is going to see it for me? No one. So I just saw it like as a lifetime call,
Mm-hmm. And so what's the motivation behind the move to Brazil?
I'm getting married. and of course
to a Brazilian.
Yeah. And of course the open banking regulations inside Brazil, because that is very fintech and cryptocurrency friendly. That is what has allowed the birth of over 400 fintech firms inside Brazil. And before that, the banking and finance sector inside Brazil was only controlled, like 87% of it controlled by the biggest, the four biggest banks inside Brazil. So it is getting more decentralized. I mean, basically, you can be a fintech inside Brazil, and you can create your own branch or company for like $3,000 if you know the right people, and you can start emitting credit online without having to resort back to a banking institution, or you won't even need a banking partner to issue credit to consumers inside Brazil.
Wow.
So it's very interesting. They also have a method of payment that is called the boleto bancario, which is like the banking ticket. So you can receive reais, okay, which is the Brazilian local currency, without even having a people sending you money directly to your account. So people would pay for that boleto bancario at throughout, like, I think 48,000 supermarkets and pharmacy inside Brazil, and you can pay a boleto bancario on your online bank account inside any online bank account inside Brazil. So that's huge for online payments, and I see that as huge for migrating Brazilians into Bitcoin as well. There are not, I think there's only one company inside Brazil that lets you pay and buy Bitcoin, pay for Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin using boleto bancario, and I do plan on like penetrating that side. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. So just to finish off on kind of what life is like in Venezuela, you know, a lot is made right now of how the, you know, wealth gap is affecting people in say countries like the US, right? Where all this, you know, central bank monetary policy is going basically to financial assets, and life is becoming more expensive for those that don't have the ability to protect their wealth. Is the same sort of dynamic does the same sort of dynamic exist in Venezuela, but just kind of has had more time to develop, and that people with wealth have been able to, you know, protect it, put it offshore, you know, put it in assets that help protect it, and you know, the people that don't have that ability have suffered the most. And this is where you get this kind of bifurcation. As you said, you have to live in a bubble because the lifestyle you're able to live is so different than, you know, the majority.
Yes, and frankly, John, look, on this side of the world, we suffer from theft and capital flights since the 1400s, since this side of the world was discovered by Christopher Columbus. So it's always been like that, be it with rum, gold, dollars, bolivares, art, oil, whatever it might be, man. So uh, yes, definitely, you see a huge wealth gap inside Venezuela. I mean, there are bankers. There are bankers here that were not even bankers 25 years ago, that don't no longer live inside Venezuela, but that strategically understood the period that, I mean, that part of history, of Venezuelan history, that was starting to go down the inflationary road, accelerating eventually into the hyperinflationary road. And so when that happens, huge wealth transfer processes occur inside a nation, right?
Mm.
These people, like for example, Juan Carlos Escotet. Juan Carlos Escotet did not have Banesco 30 years ago, and now he has even a banking institution in Panama, United States, Puerto Rico, Spain, Switzerland, and he has over $5 billion in assets. So there was a boom, an outrageous boom inside the Venezuelan economy, especially with oil booming around the $120 threshold at that time, you know? And yeah, you do see, I mean, because the Bolivar is now broke, you know, like the Venezuelan stock market is very small, but people and baby boomers specifically who invest in the Venezuelan stock market, they live, man, like they're kings inside Venezuela, and they don't care about what's happening here. I mean, maybe because of coronavirus, for example, specifically, they do care because they can't travel abroad. But people that make money inside Venezuela, they travel back and forth, inside and out of the country. They do business internationally, not only inside Venezuela. I mean, look at my business partner, man. My business partner is Swiss, and he has imported, exported a bunch of things from inside and outside of Venezuela without even being here. And that's just, you just have so many stories that way with Turks and Venezuelans and Iranian people and Russians and Chinese doing business inside Venezuela. Who knows about this globally? Nobody, man. Nobody. I mean, it's media is so controlled inside Venezuela. Information will never flow efficiently outside of my country until Maduro regime is it's broken down, man, into pieces. But yeah.
You were saying that, people like that, when they noticed, when inflation turned into like a lot of inflation and then hyperinflation, they acted and they left, or, they did things necessary to protect themselves. You have such a unique perspective having grown up in that environment. I'm wondering what kind of insights or commentary you might have on what's currently going on in, let's say, the Western world, but let's use the US as a microcosm for that, with both economically and socially, specifically in terms of like telltale signs that you may have seen before in, obviously on a smaller scale in Venezuela, but like, because I think I think about this a lot, whether it's early, Nazi Germany era, or whether it's early kind of socialist revolutions in the Soviet Union and China and Cambodia, et cetera. Like, it's hard to convince yourself or allow yourself to believe that things are going to get that bad. And I think, let's say that people have the ability to leave. The reason why I think oftentimes they don't is because they just think, oh, it's a little bad now, but it'll go back to being normal shortly, or it won't ever get that bad. And then we have all these examples in history where it just ends up getting that bad. And by the time you realize how bad it is, you can't do anything about it. You can't leave, you're stuck, et cetera. And so I think we all see a lot of worrying signs around the world today, to say the least, but I'm wondering what you see happening socially and economically in the United States, and how that compares to kind of the devolution of what happened in Venezuela.
Did you watch The Big Short, the movie?
Yeah.
Remember when Mark Baum was telling her wife, like, people just don't know, people don't care, people are watching TV, people are watching ads on TV.
Yep.
Well, today people are no longer watching TV, people are watching Netflix, which is kind of worse. But besides Bitcoiners inside the US, John, how many people inside the US really understand what's happening regarding the money printing and the Fed and the monetary policies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Very few. Yeah.
Very few, man. I mean, and what's the best way for us to make them understand it? I think it's just Bitcoin marketing, like continue building on this that we are doing right now. But look, I think it's not only a problem saying like, okay, there's money printing. That's not the only problem. The problem is, where is the money that is being printed? Where is it going to? To whose pockets? And so the Fed now has a specific list of corporate debt that it buys. And you see Berkshire Hathaway, Walmart. And so those are the richest dudes and the richest families inside the US. And so that's what started happening in Venezuela when the money printer started moving faster. Only people that have huge businesses that are already structured, that have so many years inside the market, okay, inside the economy, like expanding. They already have such a huge track record that those are the people that will start getting those subsidies from the government. Because frankly, when you print money and you give that amount of money to someone, that's subsidizing. You're subsidizing his business, and
Sure.
you're killing other businesses while doing that. Okay, you're forcing other people to change the way they live and what they do for a living based on how much these other parties are growing, thanks to your inorganic subsidies. So that happened a lot inside Venezuela. Okay, you had capital flight controls, right? You also have capital flight controls inside China, and China has printed a bunch of money compared to their economy. Okay, right. And so I think that will continue building up on the US, John. That's the thing. Like very small groups that are already inside Wall Street are the ones that will continue to just get bigger, and smaller and medium-sized firms will just continue to evaporate. Because tech businesses inside the US specifically are getting so much subsidies, okay? And they're just, like, are they really innovating, or are they buying, or are they just buying back shares? What they've been doing since 2008, okay? And so that will take the US, I think, that's my perspective, down a road that it will be a more virtual reality world inside the US, because everything will be more digital, even payments, okay? And people will have to learn how to work remotely from home, learn a code. Coding is the future. I mean, and I don't know, man. I look, so many people will suffer, and it's just such a different perspective, right? It's the number one economy in the world we're talking about right now. The milkshake effect is a reality. I mean, it hurts more other countries when the US prints money than the US itself. So that gives you an advantage, a sort of advantage. But is it being used wisely? I don't think so. If you hear the perspective and the opinions of the Bitcoin US ecosystem, I don't think you're so happy about what the Fed is doing. And it went through me what you said, dude, Dad. Eventually you see that it's getting worse, it's getting bad, but when it gets to a point that you realize that it's so bad that you can't do anything about it, I think the US is already at that point. Okay, we are already at that point with the US economy. It will be interesting to see how it ends up playing out, man. Okay, because I'm not Houdini. Okay,
Right.
but
When
yeah.
when this process,
Expect centralization inside the US to
sure.
be, yeah.
In Venezuela, when this process first was underway, and you may have been a little young to be kind of fully tuned into it all, but what, like socially speaking, and comparing to what's happening socially in the United States today, with all of this unrest centered around, more things becoming free, wanting more government handouts, wanting the government to step in people's lives more and more and more and more, were the same sort of demands arising as things were unraveling economically and from a monetary and currency perspective in Venezuela as they are now in the United States? Like, is that kind of just the same dynamic playing out?
I see it that way, John. I see it like literally the same, man. So I'm seeing the same steps that Venezuela made inside the US. And so this might sound crazy, but I joke with some friends and some people I know very closely with this. I'd say I've said before, like Hugo Chavez at its time, the dude read so much that he saw that developed economies had the control over the global system thanks to the legacy banking and finance system. And if that system is based out of fiat and you are depreciating fiat, okay, since the 1930s, okay, Chavez said, like, okay, Venezuela will never be able to do anything about it. And eventually every single nation in the world will start going down that road, because the system is not controlled by governments. It's controlled by like 150 people that we don't know who they are. And so I will have to destroy the Venezuelan bolivar for Venezuela to be one of the first countries on in the globe to experience hyperinflation. So when other countries start experiencing hyperinflation, Venezuela will already be done with it. Is that true? I don't know, but look, inside the Venezuelan economy, we have $2.4 billion in US banknotes alone, like physical banknotes, right? but the whole banking and finance sector is valued at $800 million. So we are already dollarized. And so I think that.
Did you say 800 million?
800 million. Yeah.
That's
So
nothing.
nothing. Like literally one dude in the US could buy all of the banking and finance sector from Venezuela, man.
Shit.
Yeah. So yeah, man, I think that I do think that we are sort of equipped as Venezuelans for understanding like how you have to cope with life if things get very rough because your currency is worth nothing. You understand that you have to survive and you have to become this sort of human being that is open to doing anything for a living. Okay. But yeah, that's basically what I joke with, that Chavez destroyed the Bolivar because he saw the European Union, he saw the IMF, he saw the Fed, he saw what the Chinese were doing. He started doing business with Putin and the Chinese, and the dude that is ruling over there in Iran. And so he just created this massive conflict of interests inside the country, allowing every single, like all of these different peers, big peers in the global economy to do business with Venezuela using the Bolivar, detaching the Bolivar from the global banking and finance system, and just destroying the Bolivar to eventually build on top of another standard. And I'm pretty sure that dude, before he died, he was fully aware of Bitcoin, man. You can be totally sure of that, John. Because I mean, yeah.
That'd be some 4D chess right there. I've heard you say before that it would be especially be 4D chess if they've been using all that paper fiat to actually buy Bitcoin. And I've heard you say that where Venezuela is at in their kind of monetary history right now, I'm not sure if you were serious or you were joking or where you're at with it, but you said like it's certainly a possibility that Venezuela will be the first hyper Bitcoinized country, because maybe out of necessity more than anything. Tell me more about your thoughts on that.
So that's pretty much related to what I was just saying. Like, this guy's destroyed the national currency trying to build another standard. And they failed so much at building their other standards that now the only thing that you have that they did not build, but that is being used globally, is Bitcoin, man. Okay. And that is going nowhere, and that they already adopted. So I do think that Venezuela will be the first a country to go down the road of hyper Bitcoinization. I'm sure of that. If we're not there already, because that also depends on how we define hyper Bitcoinization, correct? Mm-hmm. But if you see the reports from Chainalysis, Venezuela is sometimes the country that at a peer-to-peer level transacts the most with Bitcoin. Sometimes volumes bigger than Russia's volume. So that's huge. That's huge, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that is indeed related to hyperinflation and having to sort of revert to a different option. Like, it's like, look at me. I don't even have one Bolivar inside my bank account, man.
What do you use to get by? US?
Well, yeah, man. Like, people, as I was saying, you have $2.4 billion banknotes of just banknotes inside the economy, and that's like 3 times bigger the valuation of the whole banking and finance sector.
Right.
Yeah, and then of course I use Bitcoin, man. I'm like 100% of my savings are in Bitcoin, and if I might need Bolivars, I would use local Bitcoins. And you don't see people paying in Bitcoin, just as you won't see, like, maybe you have people in Switzerland, right, that have a bigger Bitcoin stash than a Venezuelan average Bitcoin stash, right? Mm. Do they pay with Bitcoin? No, they see it as a long-term storage value, storage Matthew for, like they bet on the long-term bet value of Bitcoin, etc. Some people don't care in Venezuela because they're not very well financially educated. We are not a financially well-educated country at a per capita level, although we have some bright minds regarding economics and finance, right? Even at Harvard. But yeah, man, that's what I use. It's this side of the world, John, craves for dollars, man. It craves for dollars.
Yeah.
The milkshake effect.
For sure. You know, it's interesting. We were talking about kind of like people that see the writing on the wall early, and with the means in past periods, they were able, and you mentioned like if they were in business or whatever, they were able to kind of get assets outside of the troubled country, and then, you know, maybe even move themselves out. So this is, you know, China, Germany, Soviet Union, Venezuela, there's many examples. And, you know, what's so fascinating about Bitcoin is that Bitcoin democratizes that process for everybody, right? It says like now everybody can opt out, and now everybody can preserve the value of their assets. And that's really, really amazing. And I think that's part of the reason why we're here. But you mentioned kind of like a virtual reality sort of world coming up. And I'm only bringing this up because I've been, you know, occasionally I think about kind of like a Ready Player One scenario, right? Where the like the physical world is still under the dominion of like power laws effectively. And so power reigns there. And the bifurcation of wealth disparity continues to grow. So you get a very small group of people with a lot of the physical wealth. You get a lot of people, you know, with very little wealth, and their physical surroundings reflect that. And it looks pretty drab. You know, you get shanty towns, you get favelas and that kind of stuff. But in the virtual world, and this is already the case. I mean, look, you could roll up on somebody's house in a really poor neighborhood. The house looks like shit. They've got like no furniture in it, but they're on social media playing video games and doing whatever for many hours of the day. And in that world, they're wealthy. They're a superhero. They're whatever they want to be. But when they unplug, man, life sucks. They can barely eat. Their surroundings are terrible and gray and uncomfortable. And so it seems only natural to assume that because one of those domains is so much more attractive and engaging and enticing and enjoyable than the other, that more activity will move there, especially in an environment where the disparity between the two becomes even more pronounced, right? Where the physical world becomes less enjoyable and the digital becomes more so. So like, I don't really have a question here, but do you think we kind of, what I'm hoping is that the way in which the impact that Bitcoin will have on the world may start to hopefully reverse that process. And so hopefully we can all have a physical world and physical surroundings that are healthy and vibrant and exuberant and enjoyable, as well as the option for those, you know, fantastic virtual worlds. And I think I probably lean that way. But do you think we go into a direction where, you know, the good reality where there's freedom for people to choose is a virtual one, and the oppressive one is what dominates in the physical world?
Totally, man. And look, 99% of the global money is digital, but only 1% of global credits are issued online. What the heck is that? I mean, if you can have access to credit, you can build wealth, right? In a world where it's structured on top of credit, literally. So I think that it resonates a lot what you're saying to me. Excellent example, by the way, John. Thank you very much for it. Really. But we also have to think like, will we continue building an important part of the global monetary system and the global banking and finance sector, whatever, globally, in the virtual realm? I think yes, because Bitcoin is best at that. Okay, and in that world, you won't need licenses, right? You won't need licenses. No bit license from New York. No Sunacrypt license from Venezuela. So it's, look, although if we talk like, for example, cryptocurrencies, right? Although they're Bitcoin, okay, I don't even want to say cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is so powerful already at a technological standpoint, but regulation still can come on top of Bitcoin and sort of not stop what Bitcoin will continue building, but, you know, like it bifurcates the road for Bitcoin, and so it makes the road for us longer, and so it gives advantage to governments and financial institutions to grab their piece of the cake, right, and try to control it as much as possible. So I do think, John, that in the virtual realm we will have more sound policies for credit issuance, savings, like also look at Minecraft. People love what they build inside Minecraft, man. Okay, eventually land will be sold inside Minecraft. What will you use to buy that? Dollars? I don't think so. I think you will use Bitcoin or an altcoin or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a crypto. But I do have a vision of the world that leans a lot on what you just said. Like we will see a detachment from the physical world and the virtual realm.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just see what Zuckerberg ends up doing with Oculus Rift, man.
Well, I mean, hopefully he's not in charge of the limitations of such a virtual world, because I think the appeal, right, is that there's far fewer limitations, like there's far fewer restrictions. And so people that desire greater freedom may gravitate there because you can transact more freely, you can experience more freely, you can do things undercover more, and that allows you more options to do the things that you want to do. Whereas the real world is increasingly restrictive. I mean, now we've had, in terms of the flows of capital and what you can do with it and how you have to report it, but this year it's been, blatantly obvious that restriction in the very physical sense of you cannot go to here, you have to stay in this place. So if you've got one that's like increasingly restrictive and one whose freedom and lack of restriction becomes increasingly more appealing, then presumably a lot more activity is going to shift there. And I think that might be part of the reason why so many Bitcoiners kind of yearn for the simple life in the physical realm. Like, you want to live in a rural environment. You want to, have your own food and energy source. You don't want to have like all this lavish goods and Lambos and stuff. You just want a simple life with people you love in a healthy environment and to treat your body well. And I think part of that is that like lack of complexity in the physical realm is now maybe the best approach, because there's so many restrictions on so much behavior that complexity will just invite more restrictions and oppression. And so to try to minimize the degree to which you even kind of you want complexity in the physical world, and then kind of get those kicks in the digital world, and move as much activity as you possibly can to the digital world to preserve your kind of sense of freedom, seems to be a trend that will probably continue.
I agree, man. But then we also have to think like, okay, how accessible is it for people globally to revert to that virtual reality realm? I don't know, because like, for example, in look in this side of the world.
Yeah.
Can people buy a Raspberry Pi and run a full node there and just sort of try to tweak on that just to play and understand it, and then eventually feel so comfortable with it that you eventually deposit some Bitcoins there, etc. How accessible is it for? It's not accessible, man. I mean, people can't even run their full nodes in this side of the world because their savings won't allow them to. So it's like, are governments sort of winning? I think so. I think governments are winning totally, man, because of their policies, their regulations, this walls that they've built for us. They've made, I mean, so many people are today unable to enjoy. I think that new trend that is being built on top of the internet, right? Because so many people just get stuck with like Instagram and Facebook, and then that's it, man. And then that's 24/7 what they do on their phone. Maybe they will play something, okay, I agree, but will eventually games become really a virtual reality? I don't know, man. We'll have to see. Oh, and if it's not Zuckerberg, maybe it'll be Sony with the PlayStation.
Yeah, we shall see. It does seem that screen, whether it's games or social media, it's just the screen is becoming closer and closer to our faces, and I think at some point integration is inevitable. But anyways, that's probably a conversation for another time. Tell me what's going on with Coinspree, finally.
Cool. So I'm gonna open. I'm gonna like talk more openly than on other shows now.
Let's do it, baby.
I'm gonna even mention names. So look, with Coinspree for the past 3 years, I've been approaching Banesco, Banco Venezolana de Crédito, Bancaribe, Banco de Venezuela, Banco Exterior, and BanPlus as well. All of these different banking entities from the banking and finance sector, letting them know that Coinspree is the only Bitcoin firm inside Venezuela, well, at least with operations inside Venezuela, that will be able to offer them a custodian solution, an institutional custodian solution, running their own Bitcoin full nodes, allowing them to build a multi-sig, etc. And so, for instance, tested with On-Chain Capital and Spectre DIY, okay, which are very user-friendly interfaces, right? And are I think like the best two options in the industry, together with Lily, right? At building multi-signature standards, open multi-signature standards, which is important. And why they want to, why they want to eventually go down that path, like having their own custodian solutions and build new financial products and services on top of Bitcoin, because I discussed it with Vlad on the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. Like, how can we, John, provide exposure to Bitcoin to a teenager who is living inside a favela inside Venezuela? I mean, probably it will first be attaching his banking account, right? His bank account in Bolivares to direct Bitcoin exposure. And the only way to do that is if that banking entity has a way to deposit Bitcoins for itself and show those Bitcoins inside their balance sheet, okay? And also provide like exchange services, eventually becoming a crypto bank, okay, for the clientele. So look at Kraken. Kraken is the first crypto bank from the US. I think globally, we will see this trend happening, that you will see some banking institutions being repealed or going bankrupt, and the ones that are capable enough to continue building and innovating and like adapting to change will transition into crypto banks. So I think that banks are going nowhere, okay? They're just going to be there, and we have to learn as Bitcoiners, because it's us that we have the knowledge. They don't have the knowledge, okay? But to build a more sound ecosystem, I think that we have to sort of drop the whole thing that we want to kill the banking system. we want the banking system to go away. I think we have to work with bankers, when we have to very intelligently find a way to do that. And so that's what I've been doing with Coinspree. Is it the right time for banking entities to adopt their own custodian solutions inside Venezuela? And maybe like what I've proposed to them, having a signing key inside Venezuela and then another signing key at Puerto Rico inside one of their Puerto Rico branches, right? For a 2 of 3 a multi-sig setup, where Coinspree could potentially have a backup key, or they could even have a backup key themselves, having all of the keys by themselves, right? It's not the right timing. Like like it's like they don't have like $1 million, for example, to spare it apart to deposit into Bitcoin and then build with Coinspree a 3 of 4 multi-signature setup, in which Knox custody in Canada might have 2 keys in Canada insured, okay, and then have the whole setup insured for up to $100 million. It's just not the right timing, and it's because of regulations as well. But I built this image already inside my country, that Alessandro Cecere with Coinspree, and El Sultan Bitcoin is like the best expert at this inside Venezuela. So eventually, if they want to do this, they will have to hit me up. I think that Casa will be unable to do so, for example, and that's the advantage that I'm building at, man. And only fintechs, okay? Only fintechs. Like for example, I have a commercial partner, Bancumbre. I also tweeted this, and Bancumbre is the only firm together with Coinspree that is using multi-sig based on the Caravan protocol by on-chain capital. So they have like a treasury stash of over 10 Bitcoins. And before they were using exchanges to deposit those Bitcoins. Now they are using Pandora Box as their Bitcoin full nodes to broadcast the transactions and verify the transactions over the blockchain. And they're using Trezors and Bitbox hardware wallets that we provided them with. And now they have like a 2 of 3 multi-sig setup in which they have deposited those 10 Bitcoins. That's pretty cool. I made it to at least one firm gain exposure to multi-sig technology inside Venezuela.
So Coinspree's main kind of business model is you're providing custody services, solutions, consultancy, plus the Pandora Box is the full node that you sell to people that are using those solutions, and I guess anyone else who wants to use a full node.
Yeah, man. And then I also, at a personal level, like I assist people with escrows. Like I call it Pandora Box escrow. and so I help people that buy and sell Bitcoin, even people that have never been in a Bitcoin. And then I earn a fee from that. Okay. And so that's mostly where I get the cash flow.
Right.
And the biggest gross margins. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's your ambition for this company, for your role in Bitcoin? Like, what are you aspiring to achieve here?
So like, look at Walla in Argentina, right? Walla, one of the biggest fintechs from Latam. They started with a banking partner, and then eventually they started providing debit cards, prepaid cards, to people inside Argentina and Latam. And those prepaid cards are attached to just one app, right? So what is it that I want to nail with Coinspree, John, and Pandora Box and the whole knowledge that I now have, and of course the image of El Sultan Bitcoin. I want to eventually be able to like commercialize our services to a big or at least a medium-sized banking institution from Latam, because eventually I will be the guy that will help them out structure themselves as an exchange. And so, go down the Bitcoin and digital assets path, which I think that if you're a financial institution and you are not already building on top of that, you're going to get pretty burned over the next 5 to 10 years. Okay. And so that's what I aspire as, at least at a stoic level, like at least one banking partner, because if you hit one ideal banking partner, you go boom. And then of course, I will never leave at a 100% level, John, the Venezuelan ecosystem. Like I structured everything in a way that even if I already left Venezuela, I will continue monetizing all of the image that I built inside the ecosystem from Brazil or Switzerland, whatever. Because Coinspree is legally based in Switzerland. That also gives me a lot of advantage, because when you approach people inside Latam and you tell me like, no, I have a Swiss legally based company, it's like, oh, okay, this is classified. This is not a scammer. This is not a Bitcoin scammer.
Right.
So, yeah, man, basically that's it. And look, I discussed it with Corey on a private Zoom meeting, Corey from Swan Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It was Corey, me, and my Swiss angel. Look, if you wanted to found a bank inside Spain, for example, the minimum share capital that you have to register and pay it's 50 million euros. But inside Venezuela, it's only like $80,000. You need $80,000 and 10 people. The hardest thing to find inside Venezuela is those 10 people, not the $80,000.
10 government people, you mean?
Not 10 government people. It can even be you, me,
Why is
Corey,
that hard to find?
trustworthy people.
Oh.
Okay, but I am betting on that. I'm betting on the Venezuelan jurisdictional environment as a very favorable one to found a fintech that can eventually become into. I mean, you can found your fintech in Colombia or on other sides of the world, okay, and then eventually, when the timing is right, Venezuela will be one of the best countries in the world, man, to found your own bank. And I want to bet on that because I want to build my own crypto bank. As much as I want to keep on building on the decentralized part of Bitcoin, that I think it first needs to be built at an educational level before, and it'll be that before at a technological level, right? Because the technological gap is very huge for most of the globe right now. I do want to continue building on, like, I love the banking and finance ecosystem specifically. And I want to continue building on this vision that the world will eventually be built like on top of crypto banks. And then, of course, people that already have the enough knowledge and savings to be decentralized for themselves.
Right. Brother, hold on one sec. I got to plug my computer in. I'll be right back, okay?
Don't worry, man.
All right. So two questions on that. One, if it's only 80, I mean, not that 80 grand's not a lot of money, but presumably, you could put it together. And 10 trustworthy people, how come you haven't tried to start your own bank already? And the second question about that is, talking about, like, I think Bitcoin is a Trojan horse any way you slice it. So I don't think it matters really the level of legacy system integration that happens and how people might be resistant to that, because I think by hook or by crook, this thing melts everything. So if you've got to get it involved in some typical legacy structures first in order to make it more palatable to some people and maybe even make it more accommodative or usable to some people in the interim period, I don't have a really big problem with that. What do you think banking and finance and credit and those things that you just mentioned you're interested in, what do you think they look like under a Bitcoin denominated world?
Well, there's an interesting level of that, which is the institutionalization of Bitcoin on their paper, right? So like Bitcoin ETFs, a lot of financial products structure on top of Bitcoin, like derivatives. Like right now we have BitMEX and Deribit and they account for like the biggest market shares of the Bitcoin derivatives market. I think that will continue building a lot. Like the derivatives market of Bitcoin will be trillions, if not quadrillions of dollars eventually, man, right? I see it that way. And then also like providing savings, Bitcoin savings accounts to people. Like there's just some people that feel more comfortable at using a user-friendly platform and accessing their Bitcoins via their phone, etc. I don't know how secure enough eventually like non-custodial wallets will be inside your phone, but like look at Casa's wallet. They advise you to deposit as much as $1,000. I mean, eventually, maybe we will see that like multi-sig wallets on your phone being built even more and more using your Bitbucks hardware wallet or your Trezor, your Ledger, whatever. And some people will be comfortable with that, like having a couple of devices spread around their own, like, I don't know, safe houses, right, or special places where they would hit those signing keys, right? Uh, but I think that it will be very interesting to see this financial institutions that look at MicroStrategy, man. It's not a financial institution, but look how much they're betting into Bitcoin already. But the ones, yeah, from a financial institution side in perspective, like the ones that accumulate Bitcoin the more, and so they will eventually become like this gold bug houses, but Bitcoin bug houses, right? That have so many Bitcoins under their stash, and that they already built a so trustworthy image as a Bitcoin custodian company, correct? That will allow them over the long term to like uh, continue translating into their balance sheets that Bitcoin exposure, and just work on that and just provide assistance to very wealthy clients for their own Bitcoin stash and like family offices, more that way. I think it's cool because when the world was structured under a gold economy, gold commerce, you would see a lot of gold commerce on the street, right? It was not like only big institutions dealing with gold. It was everyone. And I think Bitcoin will eventually hit it that way, man. Okay, like commerce on the road, and even small to mid-sized businesses custodying Bitcoin with a very accessible multi-signature setups, right? And so, not like, we're not talking. Look at it. You can already have a bank inside Venezuela with $80,000. I mean, are you considered a bank for the rest of the world if you only have $80,000 on your balance sheet? No, but you are inside Venezuela. So eventually, yeah, like I agree. Everyone will be into Bitcoin. That will melt up everything. Everything will be based out of Bitcoin, be it directly or indirectly. Uh, but yeah, I mean, for the next at least 5 to 10 years, John, I think that banks will go nowhere. They will continue being there. Some will disappear, right? Because some banks are already bankrupt, man. Okay, with the whole interest rate apartheid, and then their businesses are structured in a way that they even have to charge you for phone calls sometimes. So you figure that out. I mean,
Right.
if you can, if you can buy a Skype phone number for $1 a month, but you have to pay UBS Switzerland sometimes, or traditional banking institutions from Switzerland, you have to pay them like $10 for a phone call. What the heck is that?
Mm.
I mean,
So if you perceive there to be a pretty big benefit of having like quote unquote bank, banking license in Venezuela, why not hop on that now? What are you waiting for?
uh, okay, I'm waiting for the Maduro regime either reach a sort of agreement with the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. government. Okay, be it with the next U.S. president, which I think is going to be Trump, or eventually Trump will crack Maduro's ass. Okay, and that will be the right timing, because you will have uh, not only international investors but also local investors willing more to invest inside Venezuela and Venezuelan-based projects. Okay,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah, that's why I'm not betting on that right now. And because if it's a banking license, and if if you only get a banking license, and with a banking license, you won't be able to deal with cryptocurrencies. I don't see much value on that, because
Right.
you will only be able to provide traditional financial services and financial products. And yeah, like
So getting both is harder. To get a cryptocurrency license and a banking license is much harder.
I mean, I would be able to do so as El Sultan Bitcoin, because I know both sides of the of the ecosystem, man. But will is it like really uh, uh, is it a benefit for me? I don't think so. I don't think so, because I would have to dealing with the U.S. Treasury
A lot more
eventually.
oversight. Yeah.
Yes, I could get sanctioned by doing that. I could get sanctioned.
Right. Right. General question. This is way off topic, but just over the last few years, watching things happen in Venezuela, I'm just curious. Guaido has been, traveling around the world, and as the kind of the people's leader of Venezuela that everyone wants and that most governments are supporting. What is the reality on the ground of how much people support Maduro versus Guaido and that dynamic?
Okay, so poor people support Maduro because Maduro gives them food from time to time, some people, and they've psychologically already being brainwashed. Okay, because when you destroy an economy and people have no means to educate themselves,
Right.
I mean, right? TV is controlled, media is controlled. So in that regard, like Maduro is stronger. And I see Guaido as a bit of a bluff, to be honest, John, a bit of a bluff. It's always been like that historically inside Venezuela, and I think pretty much all over the world, right? I mean, we're talking about politicians. Okay?
Puppets.
Puppets, literally. But I don't know, man. I want to give you an excellent insight. Okay, Maduro is buying gas, okay, gasoline from Iran using gold, with a gold mine that the Maduro family has for themselves inside Bolivar, like the Venezuelan Amazon. And then he pays directly the Iranian regime with that with that gold, which is dirty gold. Literally, it's dirty. And
it's dirty because it's damaging the environment, or because they stole it, you mean?
It's stolen. It's stolen. Yeah, both.
Latter.
Yeah, both. Yeah. So we get gasoline from Iran, which is sanctioned by the US. Okay. Using like sort of a narco gold, because it's narco gold, literally. And then we get gasoline inside PDVSA gas stations throughout, like nationwide inside Venezuela. That's the only, of course, oil refined products provider inside Venezuela. But although Maduro is sanctioned and PDVSA is sanctioned and Iran is sanctioned, and we are using narco gold to buy the gas, we can use our JP Morgan Chase or Bank of America debit card to pay for that gasoline. Is that fair? Is that hypocrite?
Sounds like it.
Is that hypocrite? It's a little bit hypocrite, man.
Yeah,
okay?
Seems like it to me.
But we live in a hypocrite world ran by puppets, and the only solution to repeal that is Bitcoin. I mean, look, like I was discussing this with CK John on the Fed Watch Bitcoin Magazine podcast the other week. Like, regarding Bitcoin, if it's going to fulfill its promise and its value proposal for the globe and our daily lives, eventually everyone, every sort of human being must be able to use it, right? Be it politicians, be it teachers, be it tech savvy people, be it people from Wall Street, be it bankers, everyone. And so Bitcoin is just a pool. And when you get inside that pool, you have to just like learn and enjoy a couple of drinks with other dudes that are already inside the pool.
Yeah, of course. That's what this is all about, really.
There's no Bitcoin Baywatch team that is going to get you outside of the pool, man.
No, once you're in, you're in for good.
You're in for good.
Dude, how come you're not more concerned about speaking so openly about your opinions about the regime, what's going on, all this kind of stuff? Like you don't have any concern for whether it be, you personally or your business getting more flack if your opinions are heard by the wrong people? Like, how are you so open?
Yeah, I know a lot of people here. I know a lot of people here, man. Really, like the people that really rule the country. I know them all. Like at a private level, like from the industry, and of course from the government. I know the president himself. I've shook hands with the president. I don't care. I mean, it's my president. If it's sanctioned, I'm not doing business with Maduro whatsoever. I'm not helping him.
Right.
He's okay. He's okay.
So you're
if I don't get scared, it's because I took the time to sort of structure what I was supposed to say throughout these different Bitcoin shows, right? So just like CK said on the Bitcoin magazine, it's like you would literally have to listen to all of the El Sultan Bitcoin podcasts in a row to sort of grasp the reality and all of the insights.
So are your, kind of class of people a little bit untouchable in Venezuela, like just because of the economic clout that you carry or the integration, is that part of it? Because you mentioned, you know the right people and you should, like, you said critical things. Are you just kind of allowed, you know what I'm saying? You're smiling.
I'm allowed, man. I'm allowed. I asked for permission, and I'm not required to have a license to speak about this.
Right. All right. Last question, man. Before I know you got your birthday party, so I'm gonna let you go and enjoy your day. But like when you speak to people, your friends in Venezuela, your family members, and this stuff, like as Bitcoiners, we seem to be the ones that like the light bulb comes on and we're fully orange pilled and we're just like, oh my God. Like, but we tend to see it maybe a little bit earlier than others. How have over the course of your Bitcoin journey, how have your family, friends, et cetera, reacted, responded, interpreted this, this obsession that you have with Bitcoin?
So at first it was like, stop, Alessandro. Quit it already. But then, eventually when you see someone just insisting, it's like, okay, there must be something behind this. Bitcoin is not a scam. But yeah, like it took me so long, man, to like convince my grandparents that I was not ruining my family's finances by investing everything in a Bitcoin. And then of course my friends. But right now, like John, I have to be honest. What I have to say, it's thank you, man. Thank you, dude, because what you have done, what Brady did, Stefan Rivera, CK, Max Geiser, etc., Vlad Costella, it's like bump up my trustworthy image regarding Bitcoin inside the community and the ecosystem. And so people say like, Alessandro is part of that community in a way. And so if he's part of that community, he's not bullshitting people. Thinking it that way.
Yeah, but, nice.
Yeah, because look, Venezuela got so fucked up, dude, that you literally have to trust no one. And before it was not that way. And I can tell you, like 10 years ago, it was like you can trust, well, let's not say you can trust everyone, but everyone will just help out so much each other, because we could do so. We could do so at a per capita level. Now it's like, can we really help each other? So difficult, man. People don't have time. Everyone's in a rush, dude. Okay, like what are you buying and reselling here and buying on this part and reselling on this side of the world, this side of Venezuela? But yeah, Right now, it's just cool. I'm enjoying it so much, man. Like the El Sultan Bitcoin image and whatever.
I can tell. I can tell. So family and friends some of them have been converted to hodlers, I'm assuming,
Of
over
course,
the years.
like of course. I mean, I think had some friends that were already into Bitcoin and then eventually got burnt on during the 2017 bubble, and then they were like, I hate Bitcoin. I was like, no, hate yourself. Hate yourself for not educating yourself more, dude. But you see, that's a huge problem, education, because most of the important Bitcoin knowledge is in English. And
Right.
so if you're not sort of a English native speaker or an advanced English, or if you have an advanced English level, you might have a bigger entry level barrier, right? Regarding
Yeah.
Bitcoin understanding. Yeah.
Totally. All right, brother. Last part. I haven't been doing this too often lately, but I definitely want to do it with you. So at the end of some of the podcasts, I go through a list of words. So it's a word association thing. I say the word, you tell me the first thing that pops into your head. You down?
Cool.
All right, let's do it. Democracy.
Wow. Bullshit.
The Lightning Network.
Overrated.
Ooh, government.
Puppets.
Human rights.
Puppets.
Violence.
Necessary.
Trump.
Gemini. Gemini, which is his zodiac sign.
Did I hear someone say happy birthday to you?
Yeah.
Oh shit! All right, I gotta let you go. Yeah, okay. We're almost done. Ego.
Ego. I would say Trump.
I expected that one. FOMO.
FOMO. I don't know. Ethereum.
Wealth.
Bitcoin.
Privacy.
Bitcoin.
Hate speech.
Ethereum.
Gold.
Go old. The Grayscale Bitcoin Investment Trust, because it reminded me of the gold commercial. That gold is old.
Guns.
Far West.
Revolution.
Venezuela.
Socialism.
China.
Family.
Wow. Peace.
Inequality.
Fiat.
Hell.
Regulations.
Liberty.
Proof of work.
Energy.
Tesla.
Bitcoin.
Love.
Brother, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day on your birthday to have a chat with me. I'm going to let you go enjoy yourself now. Any last words before we sign off?
Thank you very much. Follow me on Twitter, El Sultan Bitcoin. Follow me on Instagram, because sometimes I post some excellent stories on my Instagram, El Sultan Bitcoin as well. And you can find me on LinkedIn as El Sultan Bitcoin as well, Alessandro Cecere. Thank you very much, John.
Amazing, brother. Take care of yourself. We'll talk again soon.
I'm going to pop up the champagne today.
Yeah, do it, man. Enjoy yourself.
See you later.